ladies and Ken.
I got thrown out of this last time. I got thrown out of this presentation last time. It's like, wouldn't have stayed, wouldn't it?
Yeah, right, me too.
Oh, sorry.
And just up here, I think we.
It really isn't.
Oh, if you should distribute afterwards, actually all of those 60 ones, and just saying, distribute those afterwards. Okay, so yeah, I'll just turn this on. Look, so yeah, so this essentially is a presentation that we ran a couple of months ago at a CoLab organised session for ARC committee chairs, etc. So that was out at the Velodrome at Cambridge, and we were asked to present on YPA's behalf our risk management journey over the past few years. I guess that came because we have had quite a bit of commendation around the traps, for how we have progressed in regard to risk management over the past few years. So we did feature as one of 4 councils in an Office of the Auditor General report to Parliament. They complimented us on our journey. We do have Bruce Robertson singing our praises throughout the country quite a bit as well, and so field actually a lot of queries and I guess requests for some of the collateral that we've developed. So on the basis of that, David Sutton of KPMG and CoLab locally asked us to present, and then afterwards we were sort of said, well, actually, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, look, actually, are your own councillors fully conversant with the story? And who was it? That was Gary Dyatt, was it? Right. Okay. Yep. Cool. So so we kind of thought that maybe we do this presentation to you guys as well. Hopefully it sounds familiar to you when we do go through it. Okay, but look, essentially these slides, it's all about our journey, I guess, particularly over the last 4 years, and obviously in terms of it being a journey, it's where we've come from, where we're going, and we're just going to share some of our experiences, insights, and learnings as we did a couple of months ago at that other presentation. Okay, let's just see if this works. Right, cool. Okay, so how did it begin? So I guess I have just said the journey over 4 years, but I guess it goes back a little bit further because some of the early foundations were around 7 or 8 years ago. And that was the creation of an audit and risk committee. We put that in place about 7 or 8 years ago. We had an independent member, and the former Bruce Robertson, who was a member of that committee. We also, around the same time, we implemented internal audit. So we contracted KPMG as our internal auditors, and we began getting them to do maybe 2 or 3 internal audit exercises a year. So that was another significant step. And then I guess the third one was the annual assessment of our top risks. So so you will be familiar with that annual session. We usually have KPMG, in fact, usually David Sutton himself, who facilitates that session. So all those things, those early foundations were put in about 7 or 8 years ago. However, and I guess what we're mainly talking about today is, I guess, what happened in terms of that and the increase in momentum from around June 2018, when we actually got a risk maturity gap analysis completed by KPMG. So one of KPMG's internal audits that we commissioned was the risk maturity gap analysis. And what that audit found was that there was several significant areas of improvement that we could put in place to move us from sustainable, which is what they rated us in that internal audit review, to a rating of mature. So so in response to that, we significantly refreshed our risk management policy, and we developed up a strategy, a risk management strategy, and an improvement program. I guess just in relation to the sustainable and mature and what that means, I haven't got the detail in front of me, but what KPMG essentially were saying when they rated us sustainable was that we were doing the bare minimum in terms of risk management. Their assessment was we could take it up a notch to that mature, and that was really appropriate for a local government entity to be at a mature level. We could have potentially gone to the rating above that, which I'm not sure what the terminology of that is, but it probably doesn't matter. Essentially what we decided, and it was very much in conjunction with the advice of KPMG, would be that going up to that next level, whatever it might be, wouldn't really stack up in terms of the cost and benefit, particularly for a governmental type organisation. So definitely we landed on wanting to take ourselves up from that sustainable up to the mature. Okay, so at this point I will hand on to George and Jenny to carry on through the rest of the slides.
Thanks, Ken. So one of the key things was that we set up the risk management improvement program, and we took a change management approach because we realised that fundamentally it was culture change, and we were looking for a sustainable long-term change with a positive risk culture. And to deliver the change, we needed to resource, and at that time I came on board originally to do business continuity plans, and I think I've been in the organisation less than a month and suddenly risk management was added in. You always have to be agile. And so there was some dedicated resource to be able to progress the program. But the other thing that we set up in place was a cross-organisational group, the Risk and Compliance Oversight Group, which had representation from across the various areas of the business, and also it was ground staff through to management. So we managed to use them as advisors, expertise, and to develop some of the actual change management plan, like what do their teams need to know to be able to go on this journey, and involving the staff in that way has made it a much more productive program. So what exactly do we mean by a positive risk culture? There's three key parts, and that's accountability. Council and executive take leader responsibility for risk management. And I can say in this room that that is something that I very much have the support of exec and council at this level, particularly ARC. And that's not so for some of my peers throughout the Waikato, and it makes a big difference. Awareness, risk management is at the front end of decision making and aligned to objectives, and I think we're seeing that more and more as we go on the journey. And attitudes, risk management is viewed as everyone's responsibility. We did a baseline survey a couple of years ago, or just pre-COVID, and that was one of the questions, and I'm pleased to say that we got 100%, everyone saw it, of the staff that responded, that it was everyone's responsibility. And this model is what underpins what we're doing, our thinking, and it's ongoing, and it is a journey.
So this next bit is just a really brief overview of our roadmap. So the intention was that we wanted to do a 3-year improvement plan that has been extended somewhat, particularly due to COVID, where we diverted a lot of our resource into helping to manage the response internally. So it did slow us down a little bit, but in retrospect, it was really good in terms of testing some of our practices and some of our principles and how we were applying them. So this slide just shows our what we put in place, so our foundations, which Ken has touched on a number of those. Some quick ones that we did relatively quickly, what we're working on now and what's next. So if I just probably just touch on a couple of them that are of interest. The baseline approach, so Jenny talked about that in terms of doing an audit, doing a staff survey. So we're rescheduled to do that again next year, so 23-24. So it'll be really interesting to see, fingers crossed, hopefully we have matured. We believe we have. So looking for that independent view of how we are going. The other thing I'll probably call out here is one of the key things that we're really working on now is around those interconnections. So really driving the story home that risk is about what is stopping council from achieving its objectives at that strategic level, and trying to get those interconnections. So we have it interconnected with our business planning processes, we have it interconnected with our LTP, etc. And the latest iteration you would have seen a couple of weeks ago was where we introduced appetite against our significant forecasting assumptions in the LTP. So that was another way of integrating these risk discussions with our planning cycle. The other one, just to point out, probably we've just recently, under that now, we've rolled out training to the organisation. So we have got some e-learning risk modules, and that's been a key step for us. I think we've had about 90 staff so far complete the foundation training. So that's good. We're heading in the right direction. So just probably just some of those to point out. And then where are we next? Well, our key thing for the next 12 months is operational risk management. We recognise it's an area of weakness and it can affect the organisation quite substantially if we're not managing our operational risks consistently across the organisation. So that's really, along with some continuous improvement on what we've delivered so far, we're really focused on operational risk for the next 12 months. So ARC will probably hear all about that on a number of occasions. And then just quickly, when we were asked to give this presentation around what our key learnings were on this journey so far. And so we've got some up there around what went well and what we could do better. Just to call out probably a couple of them. I think what we've tried to do is stay really pragmatic and be flexible. So risk management is a discipline in itself. And there's lots of theory and there's lots of terminology, but what we've really tried to do is keep it simple, keep it applicable, and try to apply it to what is happening for council right now and not get too bogged down in the theory. And also to be flexible and adjust as we learn, as we understand things more, and as we go on the path to really be flexible about how we look at things and take on different lenses. And the other key thing that I think has gone reasonably well is just get started. So don't get everything right initially. Like we got a quarterly report out for ARC the first time. I think it might have been 1 page. It was pretty basic. But we've built over that over time rather than waiting for perfection, I guess. And we'll continue to keep trying to take that approach as just getting going. What could we do better? I think one of the reasons why we're here today is around that full council versus ARC communication. And that's sort of one of the things is to set the scene across all of council in terms of what our journey is. So everyone is on the same page. And, you know, those that are intimately involved in ARC, you know, and obviously more across it and understand. And we want to get those messages more across to full council as well. Just put a bit of a plug in for you all. We are doing our top risk renewal and appetite setting for the next year prior to the next ARC meeting. So I would welcome all councillors to come to that workshop with KPMG if they possibly can, and contribute to that discussion around what are our top risks as a council.
So George, that's early June.
Early June, yeah.
Is that? Yes.
12, yeah.
But Monday the 12th.
Yeah. So we also invite senior leadership along to that too, so we can all have a collective discussion and get on the same page. And probably the other just key thing is that it's consistency of practice. You can never take your foot off the pedal. There's always going to be little pockets that are doing things better than others that we could leverage off and learn. And so we are always focused on trying to get that consistency of best practice across the organisation. And that's just an ongoing conversation and reiteration of work. So that's probably it. That's it.
is.
Yeah.
So I think when we presented this at the regional forum, we had about an hour of questions afterwards. so we're not necessarily inviting that today, but but look, if there's any questions or any comments, very, very, very happy to take those.
Yeah. Thanks, team. I've just got a couple of questions. First, the operational risks, which are going to be your sort of next work on. Do you anticipate that being a top risk heading in its own right, or will you pick particular operational risks that sort of get elevated to that point?
I think there's probably two things. So our top risks are our generally you'd call them strategic risks, but look, if there's an operational risk that should be on that list, then we would escalate it to that level. I think we're yet to really fully understand what the approach is going to be in an operational risk space. At the moment, we've got risk registers sitting around the business that, to be fair, probably aren't being actively managed. And so what we're trying to do at the moment is just develop an approach where we can really daylight what they are quite quickly and get them reported through to ARC. And again, they will come through to ARC if they are very high or extreme. So you may see something that's very pertinent and within the top risk, or you may see it coming through individually. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the focus in that space and that operational space is just being really consistent in the way that we do it, because because each activity has for many years maintained, as George says, their own operational risk register. But look, the way those are being maintained, even the way the risk ratings are being done, is quite variable between teams. So this was all about putting it into a place where there's been good education around it and really a much more consistent management, I suppose, of those operational risks.
My second question is, Mike, being on the receiving end of the reports, which are great, your quarterly reporting, you kind of read it and you worry that it's an undue drag on management having to do it, and I've always been worried about that. Do you have a comment on that? Like, is a management, is it sort of killing them having to do it?
Is it killing us? No, I'm not sure.
It killed Kim when they all leaned on his desk.
No, I don't think so. I think it's such an important function that I think it isn't, and I think it's something that needs to be part of our BAU, that we resource to be doing that. I think as we mature more, that we will get better at it and we will understand what those key messages are and potentially rationalise down. So for example, I think at the next ARC, we're actually rationalising some of the strategic reports around LTP Ahuaki down into one report. So we are continuously trying to refine. And we'll find a lot of our work to integrates as well. So for example, the key risk indicator report that goes through to ARC around financial sustainability also goes to finance and corporate every quarter. So we're trying to look for those synergies as well to reduce effort.
So look, a lot of work does go into this space, and when we created the committee, the Audit and Risk Committee 7 or 8 years ago, there was a lot of work that went into preparing agendas and stuff. But look, I can honestly say that it does add value. So so they are big agendas, they are pretty much full day meetings. But this committee, I think, does the Audit and Risk Committee does really add a huge amount of value, I think, to the way council works. And and I say, I would say that largely before the creation of this committee, a lot of the risk management at Waipa was really done at the officer level without any great insight or direction or ownership from at the governance level. The creation of that committee has obviously put the oversight of risk or the management of risk at the the correct level, and really good interaction between officers and governance in that space, as it should be. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could give us examples of how that involvement of elected members has helped the management of risk. Yeah, because, you know, as you said, it used to be mostly done at an officer level, the risk management. Yeah, and whether or not you've got any concrete examples of not necessarily the involvement of councillors in helping manage risk, but maybe through the ARC's, I suppose, operation that you may have averted, some things that may have caused, may have been far more elevated, you know, if you know what I mean. You're like, if you've got any concrete example of a real benefit in a tangible sense.
So one of the real benefits is actually the discussion at ARC and the understanding of risk appetite and linking that back to what's going. Like at the last ARC meeting, we, after the discussion at December's meeting, we came back with revised ratings for the top risk, just because the environment's so volatile. And I think their involvement means that we are keeping on top of risk. We had a really good discussion, you know, like it was only a couple of weeks after Cyclone Gabriel, but everyone, like Bruce had raised it and I'd put it as an emerging risk on the quarterly risk report. And there was a lot of discussion about, okay, we're uncertain what it means, but where may it impact the business? Where may we need to start putting some resources? So I think it's the richness of the discussions. And I think having the discussion around appetite also helps set some boundaries for officers, and it helps frame discussions, and particularly at the exec level about what should be escalated, not escalated, I think is a lot clearer now, and I think that's a huge value.
Yeah.
In terms of, sorry, I was just going to say, in terms of tangible things, I think one of the key things is linking it with the planning cycle. So, for example, our top risks, we have additional mitigants that we want to put in place, and they are identified by staff and the executive team, and they actually become initiatives in their own right, and as part of business plans, they arise in the organisational KPIs. So, for example, the Tangata Whenua partnership model is an example of, you know, what could we do more to be mitigating this risk, our customer experience strategy, etc. Those initial discussions all started with, we're actually carrying some risk, so how can we help mitigate it? Then they turn into actual tangible initiatives that you will see at council.
So in fact, the timing of that facilitated session every year is very deliberate for the beginning of June, just before we lock into place all of our planning, business planning for the following year. So I was going to say, in terms of some of the tangible benefits I see, and some of the most valuable elements is definitely that top risk session every year. I think that's a really good interactive session where we, as both governance and officers, really do look at what our key strategic risks are, and are very deliberate about ensuring that we've got appropriate mitigants in place. I think that's really valuable. I think at Audit and Risk Committee, like the deep dives into risks. So we do one or two of those at every meeting. That's on those top strategic risks. I think that's really valuable. I even think the other really valuable sessions are those quite sort of free-ranging, free and frank discussions where we're one of the GMs or the GMs in turn, present the what's keeping me awake at night type thing, and that sort of always ensues in a 20 minutes or so discussion in regard to that. And then Gary does likewise at the organisational level. In fact, Gary does that every meeting in terms of the what's keeping him awake at night and looking for direction and input into that. So I think those are some of the I think the really valuable things that come out of that committee and that sort of things.
And I think one of the things at the session that we had with CoLab with David Sutton talked about the global risk profile, the Economic Forum risk profile, and it was reiterated again at the Aon Insurance session, and the top risks on that profile were virtually identical to our top risks. There was one that was different that we didn't have, and that was about democratic breakdown, dissatisfaction, political uncertainty, unrest, the anti-authoritarian thing coming through, the misinformation. But most of the rest of those risks we had either covered off directly or they were amongst drivers for our key risks. So we're on the right page, which is reassuring.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Great presentation. I'm sure it went down very well at the Velodrome. And yeah, look, I totally agree. One of the really big things that comes out of this is looking at your risks, deciding what risks can be mitigated, what the costs of doing it are, and weighing up the value of that. And some risks can't be mitigated, but being aware of them can help you respond better when something does come to fruition. So yeah, thanks very much. Well done.